Interview I told you about earlier, Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga has called outgoing IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati a criminal who belongs in jail, saying Chebukati bungled yet another election. Raila also launched a scathing attack on the tribunal investigating the conduct of the Cherera 4 commissioners and described Justice Aggrey Muchelule, the chair of the tribunal, as a judge of questionable ethics, saying he is unfit for the role. Raila says Parliament, the executive and the judiciary are all working together in cahoots. Now, talking for the first time about his election loss in August, Raila exonerated former President Uhuru Kenyatta and his allies from any blame for the election outcome. He has also given the clearest indication yet of a push for a referendum in 2023, saying the Azimio coalition will constitute a constituent assembly to push for reforms that are wider than the failed Building Bridges initiative. Speaking to Citizen TV's Trevor Ombija, Raila Odinga, who had made his fifth stab at the presidency, described the election as the most significant event of 2020.
This year was an election year. Like all election years, Kenyans turned up in large numbers to vote. And they voted very effectively. They elected their leaders from the MCAs, members of parliament, women reps, senators, governors, and the presidency. They voted, and I want to say that the process was fairly smooth. People turned up and voted. The only hitch was actually to do with the presidential elections. And this was only messed up at the tallying center, the tallying point. For the first time, Kenyans saw an electoral commission that was divided, not in the middle, because 4 out of 7 commissioners disputed the results. Only 3 approved those results, meaning that majority of the commissioners said those results were not a reflection of how the Kenyans had voted. It is unfortunate that the chairman of the commission divided the commission and then decided to unilaterally go ahead, gazette himself as the returning officer for the presidential elections and declare results which only him himself knew where he got them from. Because as you remember, at the time that he had disappeared, 29 constituencies' results had not been announced. And for 2 days they had stopped the portal from announcing results. But then he came back and came with his results, which he said his staff had compiled and unilaterally announced those results. It was a tragedy of justice. And it was even much bigger tragedy when the Supreme Court confirmed that kind of blatant rigging of the elections. So I want to say that I'm not bitter because the elections are not for Raila Odinga, it's for Kenyans. What we are saying is that we want an audit of these results. We want an audit of these results so that Kenyans can have confidence come 2027, that they can go to the polls, cast their votes, and those votes will count.
Chebukati says this is the most credible elections and he has no regrets.
Those are Chebukati's standards, which in my view are very low standards. Indeed, in my view, Mr. Chebukati is a criminal who should be prosecuted and sentenced to jail. What he has committed is a great crime against the humanity and against the people of this country. I believe very strongly that he, not the other 4 commissioners, are the ones who should be on the dock.
Now that we're talking about the election and how it turned out, again, your chief agent, Saitaba Ole Kanchori, says that 3 people bear the biggest responsibility. 1, Junet Mohamed, Joe Musheru, and Makau Mutua. Do you agree with it?
I don't really want to engage in argument with my chief agent, because those are things that we can deal with in-house. So I want to reserve my comments on that issue.
But your chief agent, Saitabao Ole Kanchori, said that your campaign was disorganized, the command center didn't work, the agents were not paid. Is this true?
Absolute rubbish. His duty was at the Bomas of Kenya, not about the campaign and not about the agents and so on. You see, you need to say this, to realize this. We have in elections an electoral commission paid for by the taxpayers of this country to conduct free and fair elections. And Kenyans spent billions of shillings. This time it was over, again, 40 billion shillings, close to 50 billion shillings of public money that went into doing these elections. The Electoral Commission has the responsibility of hiring returning officers and presiding officers and so on. So there is no need for candidate to have agents. It is the responsibility of the Electoral Commission to conduct a free and fair elections. This election should not be stolen. The Electoral Commission should not come to you and tell you that you did not have agents, that's why your votes were stolen. The Electoral Commission must protect the votes. It is their responsibility. That's why the public funds are given there. In other places, United States and so on, there are no agents. In Britain, there are no agents. This is the whole idea that if a candidate does not have agents, then his votes are stolen. It's a crime against the people of this country. You don't need to have an agent. Why should you have to pay agents all 46,229 polling stations? It is a misnomer. It is something that should not happen. The commission failed Kenyans. They will continue to fail Kenyans. So the blame should be directed where it belongs. Our votes were stolen at the tallying center, not at the polling stations.
But the Supreme Court disagrees with you.
Of course, and you have to ask yourself, when the Supreme Court acted the way they acted, what was the persuading factor? I believe that they were persuaded.
By who? Because all of you took your evidence to the Supreme Court. In fact, yes. Some of the evidence from your side was called hot air.
You saw how the Supreme Court handled the matter so casually. You saw how the kind of language that they used, which is not even a judicial language, the arrogance with which they dismissed our case. That's why we are talking about an audit of this electoral process, starting from the polling station, all the way to the constituency, to the National Tallying Center, the Electoral Commission, and even to the Supreme Court. Do have a complete audit and come up with a proper figure, proper facts. This country's electoral democracy must come of age. It must come of age. The others are applying standards which are different. I've mentioned this to some of the diplomats. In Europe, where an election has been conducted, and 4 out of 7 commissioners say these are not the results, in the EU, they will not allow it. They will not allow it. 4 out of 7 commissioners are saying these are not the results, and you still say these results are credible. It is actually a shame to our electoral democracy.
3 of those dissenting commissioners have now resigned, and only Irene Masit is facing the tribunal. Do you believe that tribunal is going to unearth the truth? Some of the things that have been mentioned there already is that some of the politicians allied to your side visited Masit.
The politicians were justified to visit these commissioners because They were saying no. So our people were actually justified in finding out what is it, what was the truth. It is because that was already post facto. The result had already been announced by Mr. Chebukati. But our people wanted to know what actually transpired. You see, and they're making too much noise about it in the so-called tribunal. That tribunal itself is illegal, as you know. The way it was constituted. The matter was rushed, but before even the bill was taken to Parliament, the so-called victor who brought the bill already condemned these 4 commissioners as people who would have put the country to turmoil, and that they need to be investigated. So they were already condemned before they were charged, before they were tried. And they knew that it was a charade, that they couldn't expect any justice before the tribunal, Michelule. As you know, that he himself has got integrity issues. His name was mentioned in the Akasha trial in the US as one of the people who are on the take. As you know, there's a big file on him by the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Is now the angel who is now trying the other commissioners. It's a charade. You don't expect any justice from that kind of tribunal. Remember, the matter was forced into Parliament by a Parliament which had already been cowed, passed quickly. The following day, the president appointed the tribunal, and the same day, the Chief Justice was already there to swear in the tribunal. This is the conspiracy. The Parliament, the executive, and the judiciary, all acting in cahoots. We are facing the same situation that we faced in the 80s and early 90s, and we must actually say no to this.
Do you believe that your closest allies let you down during the campaign season?
There was nothing wrong on our side. Our campaign was one of the best campaigns, the most organized campaigns throughout, because there's nothing that is perfect in this world. But I don't want to play a blame game among our people. We know exactly where things went wrong, and we're saying it straight. All these other statements we're hearing are diversionary. They're diverting our people's attention for a very serious crime committed by the chairman of the Electoral Commission and his team. And this is where the blame should go. Yeah.
Some people say that your ally, who is the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, did not support you as he had promised to support you.
Nothing could be further from the truth. Uhuru was not supposed to be campaigning for me. I am a politician in my own right, and I'm capable of campaigning and winning elections. And Uhuru knows it. Uhuru only said that he stood by me, that between me and Ruto, he will support me because of my track record. But he was not the one who was going to campaign for me. He did not move around campaigning for me. He basically stayed on his duties and did not use his position as the incumbent president to swing the result in my favor. He did not. He even did not use the security forces. He did not give instruction to the police, to the intelligence machinery, to the director of criminal investigations to support me in any way. So the environment was very free and fair for everybody. Okay, if he had wanted, he would have used the security forces. You remember, there's those people from Venezuela, one Jose Camargo, who were arrested at the airport with gadgets and information and password for the Electoral Commission. And they said that the report said that these people could compromise the elections. In the end, the direction was given that those people should be released. And they were released. If Uhuru had wanted to interfere with the elections, those people should have either been prosecuted or deported. But he did not. And then eventually, those people are the ones who were with Chebukati. We now have information of the role that those people played in manipulating the election results. Those facts are out there.
Did you bear the burden of an incumbent president? Because he had said that he will stand with you, and therefore, did his mistakes become your burden? Did you bear the burden of incumbency?
Not at all. I mean, Uhuru was not campaigning for me. How does the issue of burden come into this? We campaigned very effectively. And I just want to tell you that I got a lot of votes in Uhuru's backyard. And that's where most rigging was done. I got a lot of votes from Central Kenya. And I really want to thank the people of Central Kenya for voting for me the way they did vote for me. I'm very grateful to them for doing that. And the fact will come out sometimes. Yes.
You released a very harsh statement on the review of the first 100 days of the Ruto regime. In fact, you gave them a 4 out of 10. There are those who say that this is just the usual rivalry between yourself and the incumbent president. Is this a fair assessment in your view?
In fact, that was not just me. That is Azimio team. Me, my rating was not 4, it was 3 out of 10. But because of the compromise at 4 out of 10. Because you see, every Kenyan today will tell you that they are unhappy. 73%, which is now much higher than closer to what myself I had thought. It's what the Kenyans feel. That life is worse today than it was at that time. Remember, they had given promises that when they took over, within this period, the cost of unga will drop from 200 shillings per packet to 70 shillings. It is actually gone up. They had said that they were going to reduce the price of fuel. The price of fuel has gone up. Therefore, with it also the cost of energy has also gone up. Then there were the issues of kazi kwa vijana, kazi mtaani, which Uhuru had introduced to actually put money into the pocket of the youth and women. That also has been suspended. Then there's also the fund which we are giving to the elderly people, wazees and widows and so on. All that itself has also been dropped. And people are suffering seriously. Then he had said he was going to ensure that there's gender parity in his cabinet, that he was going to appoint 50% women in his cabinet. Yeah. Out of 22 ministers, he has appointed 7 women.
But MPs were involved in all these appointments. Were the Azimio side MPs, did they live up to expectation to object to these appointments?
Of course, remember, our people came up with a report, that vetting committee, which objected to some of the people. You see, this issue of chapter 6 of our constitution, that talks about integrity in public service. And we've shown even in this Azimio report that a number of people he has appointed to public service do not meet that criteria, which is chapter 6, okay? He actually had a choice. You've seen how he has interfered with the criminal justice system. First, they have forced the director of criminal investigations to resign. And then they have now compromised the director of public prosecution. Criminal cases, which were already before the courts, are now being withdrawn supposedly because there are no evidence. The DPP had gone public under Uhuru and said that he does not take instructions from anybody. He said that the DCI cannot dictate him. He cannot even talk to him. He is his junior. Now the cases himself had found to merit prosecution. He is now withdrawing them. If he was not directed at that time to prosecute, why are the cases being withdrawn right now before they have even been tried? You see, because there is pressure and interference. Cases where the court themselves had frozen money and said that money belonged to the government. The money is now being refunded back to the criminals. Okay? So we are really going back to those dark days. The judiciary is being compromised. The criminal, the prosecution is being compromised. The investigation agencies are being compromised. So we're just going back to those dark days, which is very unfortunate indeed.
There's been a suggestion to create the office of the leader of opposition.
You see,
what are your thoughts on this?
We had come up with a BBI in which Kenyans participated and expressed themselves. And we came up with a very comprehensive piece of legislation. But it was opposed by these very same people. Remember, we had expanded the executive. We had the office of the Prime Minister, the 2 deputy Prime Ministers, and so on. We even had also an ombudsman for the judiciary. And we had even the position of leader of opposition. They opposed it at that time. Now they are coming back and want to introduce it through the back door. We had said that we wanted cabinet ministers to be members of parliament so that they could answer questions. So we are actually going back to the hybrid system of government, where you had the executive in parliament, and they had opposed it. Now they're saying that they want to change standing orders to allow cabinet ministers to go and answer questions in parliament. You cannot do it through the back door. It's a very, very fundamental alteration of the constitution that must go to the people. The same thing with the leader of official opposition. You're not going to be enticed because I'm going to be given an office in parliament. I've had an office in parliament as a prime minister, and I used to answer questions and speak on behalf of the government in parliament. So it's nothing so exciting to me, and we cannot be compromised or bribed to circumvent the constitutional provisions just to satisfy certain interests.
But if it went through a referendum, would you accept the position of office of the leader of opposition?
I mean, if it went through a referendum, what we are going to do, we are going to initiate a constitutional review, which is going to be participatory. We will come up with a constituent assembly, which will do a review, because this constitution is now 12 years old. It now requires a review, because now we know where the shoe is pinching as a people. But we're not going to do it at behest of Kenya Kwisha administration. That will be resisted by the people of Kenya.
So you will reintroduce BBI?
And wider, we'll go slightly wider. There are some areas which we did not touch at that time. So we will involve the people in looking at it. Yeah.
When is this likely going to happen?
We'll beginning of next year, we will be at it. Yes.
As we wind up on this conversation, are you confident that the Azimio coalition will hold?
Certainly. Azimio coalition will hold. Naturally, there are always pressures. So there have been post-elections. The party which is running government try to entice people through positions, appointments, here and there, to weaken the opposition. That has been the case, and we are seeing it also now when the Kenya Kwanza administration is trying to weaken the opposition. But the people themselves are not amused. We are more concerned with the people than with the individuals. Individuals will run and go. But we also know that at a certain stage, when they realize where the people are, they will come back. So we are not bothered at all that somebody has left us, has gone the other side to the government. Those are opportunistic moves which are just self-serving and do not serve the interests of the people.
Will you run for president for the 6th time?
I am not talking about running for president. I'm concerned about what has just happened. I want to ensure that this matter is cleaned up. I want to ask you, why would Kenyans again go and queue in 2027 to vote when their votes are not going to count? That is the question which you need to answer. So if you answer that question, then everything else will be okay. I don't have to run as a president. And I want to repeat, I don't have to run as a president in 2027. But if I didn't run, somebody else will run. But I've not said that I'm not going to run. I want you to get me right. Because the media is all the times in the habit of misquoting. I'm not talking about 2027 now. I'm talking about 2022, which must be sorted out.
Thank you very much.